Edward Langston was a man of unimaginable wealth, the kind of man whose life was measured not in hours or heartbeats, but in profits, properties, and prestige. He owned 5 mansions, 3 private jets, and a reputation for being ruthlessly shrewd. But beneath his polished suits and cold blue eyes, there was one thing he valued above all: control. To Edward, everyone had a price. Every employee, every business partner, even every so-called friend. Everyone except, it seemed, his maid. Her name was Maria Alvarez, a soft-spoken woman in her early 40s who had worked in Edward's mansion for nearly 2 years. She came from a humble background, a widow from a small town who took the job not for luxury, but for survival. She was efficient, discreet, and respectful. Never late, never nosy, never wasteful. But that was exactly what made Edward suspicious. The suspicion. Edward's friends often mocked him for keeping a full-time maid in his city mansion. "Why not get a cleaning service?" one of them laughed over cigars. "You're practically inviting someone to snoop around your fortune." That night, Edward couldn't sleep. He remembered the times Maria had entered his study, to dust his bookshelves, wipe the mahogany desk, or polish the glass case holding his collection of antique watches. His safe, built discreetly into the wall behind a painting, was in that same room. It contained jewels, gold bars, confidential documents, and, most importantly, cash. What if she's been eyeing it all along? He thought bitterly. The next morning, Edward decided to test her. The trap. When Maria came in that day, Edward greeted her coolly as usual, then left for his meeting downtown. Before leaving, however, he unlocked the safe, deliberately, leaving the steel door slightly ajar. Inside, thick stacks of cash sat neatly beside a diamond necklace worth more than Maria's entire life savings. Edward positioned a hidden camera in the study, disguised as a clock on the bookshelf. He wanted to see what Maria would do when temptation stared her in the face. If she stole even $1, he'd have her arrested. If she didn't, well, he didn't expect that outcome at all. The moment of truth. Maria arrived at the study around noon, carrying her usual cleaning supplies. She noticed immediately that the safe door was open. Her hand froze midair, clutching a feather duster. For several seconds, she just stared at it, her brow furrowed with confusion. Then, slowly, she looked around, as if to confirm she was alone. Edward, watching remotely from his office, smirked. Here it comes. But Maria didn't move closer. She took a cautious step back, then whispered under her breath in Spanish, "Señor Langston, what have you done?" Then she did something Edward never imagined. She took out her phone, not to take pictures or call anyone, but to record a video message. "Sir," she said gently into the camera, "I found your safe open while cleaning. I don't know if it was an accident or a test, but I'm leaving this message for you to know I didn't touch anything. I'm closing the door now. God bless you." She ended the recording, gently closed the safe, and covered it again with the painting. Then she knelt, yes, knelt, and prayed quietly. Edward sat frozen in disbelief. The realization. That night, when he returned home, he said nothing. Maria finished her duties and left as usual. But Edward couldn't let go of the image of her praying in front of the safe, not for herself, but seemingly for him. He replayed the footage several times. There was no greed, no hesitation, only genuine humility and integrity. The next morning when she came in, Edward called her into the study. "Maria," he said, his tone unreadable, "did you find anything unusual here yesterday?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering nervously. "Yes, sir. The safe door was open. I thought perhaps you forgot to lock it. And you didn't touch anything." 6 months after the life-altering encounter between Edward Langston and Maria Alvarez, the mansion on Hillcrest Drive no longer felt like a fortress. The marble floors still gleamed, the chandeliers still sparkled, but the air inside had softened. Laughter, music, and even the scent of home-cooked food occasionally filled the halls that once knew only silence. Edward had changed. The man who once trusted no one now spent his mornings reading letters from families helped by the Alvarez Trust for Integrity and Hope. He often reread Maria's words, written in neat Spanish-accented English. "Sir, your kindness did not just heal my daughter's body. It reminded me that miracles can start from mistakes." Yet even with all he'd done, Edward felt something unfinished, an invisible promise still waiting to be fulfilled. A letter from Madrid. One afternoon, while reviewing reports in his office, Edward's assistant, Thomas, entered with an envelope marked with foreign stamps. "It's from Maria," he said with a small smile. Edward tore it open. Inside was a handwritten letter and a photograph. In the picture, Isabella stood on her own 2 feet in a sunny courtyard in Madrid, her braces gone, her arms lifted high as if she were reaching for the sky. "Dear Mr. Langston, Isabella's final surgery was successful. She's walking freely now, and her doctors say she may one day even dance again. I can never repay what you have done, but we both carry you in our prayers every day. We will return to the city next month. Isabella wants to thank you in person. With gratitude and faith, Maria Alvarez." Edward's throat tightened. He placed the photo on his desk beside an old framed newspaper article about his business empire. For the first time, the empire looked hollow compared to that simple image of a healed child smiling in the sunlight. The return. When Maria and Isabella returned, the reunion was emotional. The girl, now 15, walked confidently into Edward's study wearing a bright yellow dress. "Mr. Langston!" she exclaimed, running the last few steps before embracing him. Edward froze, then slowly hugged her back, overwhelmed. "You're really walking," he said softly. She nodded proudly. "Mama says I can even run now." Maria, standing behind her, smiled with tears glistening in her eyes. "You gave her that chance, sir. I will never forget it." Edward shook his head. "No, Maria. You gave me a chance to be a better man." They talked for hours, about Spain, about the charity's work, about Isabella's plans. She wanted to study medicine someday to help children who couldn't afford care. As she spoke, Edward's heart swelled with admiration. He'd spent years around ambitious people, but their dreams had always been about profit and prestige. Isabella's dreams, like her mother's integrity, were pure. A shadow in the light. But good fortune has a way of attracting envy. Unbeknownst to Edward, one of his former executives, Victor Crane, had been watching the foundation's growth with resentment. Victor had been fired for embezzlement months before Edward's transformation. Now, seeing Edward divert millions into charitable causes infuriated him. "That money should have gone to the company," Victor ranted to a reporter. "Langston's losing his edge. He's being manipulated by a maid who played him like a fool." The story hit the tabloids within days. Billionaire falls for his maid's saintly act. Critics question Langston's mental stability. Edward ignored it at first, but Maria was mortified. "Sir, please," she begged when she saw the article. "Let me resign. I never wanted to bring you trouble." Edward slammed the paper onto the desk. "You're not resigning, Maria. You did nothing wrong. This foundation bears your name because it stands for truth, and truth doesn't bow to gossip." But deep down, Edward knew this wasn't over. The betrayal. Weeks later, Edward discovered that someone had leaked Co.